This video explains a test layout that I'm planning to construct. As you can see here, this panel that I built a while back using a Waveshare 32 channel relay module and a 32 channel input module. This was basically designed to handle all the track power, all the photo eyes, the 4 remote switches, the signals, and the block detects as remote I/O. But after I constructed it, came to realize that it really wouldn't save anything as far as wiring by switching over to remote I/O. So I kind of not going to use this. But I decided to instead of dismantling, that I might be able to at least put it to some use. Because later on, I came across these modules online. These, for example, have 8 points of relay and 8 points of input, and the smaller ones have 4. So what this would allow is to actually locate these modules up on the layout. Well, except for this first one. This one would be designed to handle the remote switches, throwing the remote switches and reading the RSC lights. This would be on the PLC panel. But the other 4 would be relocated to the west side of the track, the south side, the east side, and the north side. Because what that would let me do is these would handle each section of the track as far as the signals, track power, photo eyes, and block detects. It would significantly reduce the amount of wiring required to go between the layout and the PLC controls and the engineer control panel, because I'd like to be able to eliminate some of the cabling, particularly to the engineer control panel, because there's like 15 cables. I'd like to, it's a lot of weight. So decided, let's put this to use, or let's test if remote I/O would be capable enough to run the layout. So as you could see here, this is where the model train project was created, and now a new layout is being constructed. Different from the model train layout, because I'm basically just using leftover parts and track that I have. For example, these switches here are 036 switches connected back to back. I originally purchased these remote switches all the way back in 2008 when I was constructing my original around the wall layout, because the idea that I had was that I could allow the track to not only be in the living room, but to be able to let the train exit the living room and run into 2 other rooms. But after some work, it came to realize that it really wasn't practical with the suspension and that, so the idea was scrapped. So I'm utilizing 2 here and 2 here to provide crossovers between the inner and the outer loops. And here you could see I have here a Micrologix 1100 PLC, which will be used for the test layout. I found this used on eBay. I mean, Micrologix 1100s are not made anymore and discontinued. But most of the units you would find online would be used, but would command a high price, because any automation machinery that has one of these in here and fails, well, basically, you need to get that machine up and running, and you're going to basically pay a price, to get one of these now. But being a patient man, I just keep an eye out on eBay, and turns out I came across this one inexpensively because it was listed as not working or for parts. And the description simply said that the first output, which is a relay output, wasn't working. And really all it is it turns out the relay has failed in the PLC. I mean, the output turns on, but the relay doesn't work. And I've repaired a couple of these before. I mean, it's actually not that hard. Take it apart and unsolder and replace the relay. I didn't actually bother to do that with this unit because I'm simply going to be using this to do remote I/O. So for right now, I really don't need the outputs for anything. Down the road, I'll probably take it apart and fix it because it's not really that hard. But for right now, I'm not really going to worry about it. The feature of it is that it not only has the same serial port as a Micrologix 1000, but you can only use that for programming or a HMI panel. This one will allow you to, using this little converter box, to convert the serial into RS-485 for Modbus, but it also includes an Ethernet port, which I routed to an Ethernet switch, this is the programming cable, or the cable that goes back to the computer for programming, and then another one for an HMI panel. And of course a power supply, because the Micrologix 1100 does not have a built-in power supply, so an external one is provided. And this here is a touch panel that supports Ethernet. This is actually a spare unit I bought for the model train project, and which is kind of good because for now over a year, Automation Direct has not had these in stock or available, so it's kind of good to have a spare because, well, you never know. But in the meantime, I'm just going to use it for doing the test layout, because the other touch panels that I have that I've shown, they're serial only, so I really couldn't use them for the test layout. And here is a new engineer control panel, simplified compared to the model train project. This CW80 transformer was actually salvaged from my original around the wall layout, like I said, constructed back in 2008. The Micrologix 1100 doesn't have an analog output capability, so it's not possible to control the throttle of the transformer like I do with my model train project. So basically nothing's going to be modified in this CW80. So I do have another reduced track switch, which will decrement the track power on downgrades, by 1.4 volts per every step, basically back-to-back diodes. This was actually salvaged from my original around the wall layout, so it's been put back in use. And because I have 2 loops, I am going to be using 8 track powers, 2 on each side for inner and outer loop. And then these are the 4 remote switches, control for the 4 036 switches. And I'm not planning to use the button box, but I'm just wiring in a simple start-stop for automatic and manual control. And that's it. Not really planning to add on any other lights or that, because it's basically a test layout, a playing around layout. Who knows how far the rabbit hole goes. Just a note, another reason why I chose to use a Micrologix 1100 is the computer that I've been using to program the model train project, which I did with a Micrologix 1400. The RS Logix is a paid version of the software. And after I moved the train project to the around the wall layout, I moved my license of this software to my laptop in case I needed to make changes there on the fly. But now easier done because it's on the home network, so I don't have access to the licensed software on here anymore. But the Micrologix 1000 and 1100 series, you can use a free version of RS Logix, which is basically the same, but it can only program those 2 models. So it was actually another reason why I chose a Micrologix 1100, is that I could just use the freebie version. And because it uses the same ladder code, I'm actually able to import some of the ladder programs from my model train project. And of course, I'm going to end up making changes to the ladders, because instead of referring to point I/O like the model train project does, these are going to point to remote I/O, which is just simply be binary bits. And then, when this program sees that, okay, there's wants to write out a change a relay, it just writes it out as a Modbus command. And here is, a simplified automatic control. It has, because I have 8 track powers, there's 4 double pole relays, higher current. to handle the 8 track powers, which will basically select between if the engineer control panel has control of the layout or the PLC. And now here I have 4 force-guided relays, which would do the same thing for the remote switches, except these are force-guided. And this is just the relay that handles the start, stop, or manual automatic control. Unfortunately, I ran out of terminal blocks, so I am not able to connect the wiring to these remote switches, or at least to bring them out to a terminal block. So for right now, I'm going to leave these unconnected because the remote switches are just momentary buttons. So, I mean, they don't have like one activated at all times. So if I just put these in parallel with the automatic relays, it should not be a problem. Later on, if I come across something, then I might, wire them up. But it's, being that this is just going to be a test layout, a play around project, I'm not really going to be too concerned about it. And I just wired in a quick emergency stop. It's going to be the only other control that I have, just to be able to stop everything if something goes haywire. So basically, this is just a little video of a test layout, basically going down the rabbit hole, because I want to see if remote I/O would be fast enough to be able, so that the train project can react quick enough to changing conditions, and then it could potentially lead to a major rewire of the train project, which would eliminate at least half of the cabling. So we'll see where this goes. Until then, take care.